Hello, I'm Mischievous Marcinacchio, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Fantasy number 15, and of course, all of the Amazing Spider-Man annuals, which I say do not count.
Yeah, and I'm Dapper Dan Gavoston, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including those same annuals. Except, my opinion on the matter is that they count towards a full collection of Amazing Spider-Man, but for me, in a moment of rare concession, I must admit, Amazing Fantasy 15, owned by my good friend Mark, remains a fantasy for me and should probably be counted in a collection of Amazing Spider-Man.
That's what I was going to ask, Dan. Does it count or no? You got to answer.
I think it counts.
There.
I think if I spent that kind of money and it didn't count, I would probably lose my mind.
Okay,
yes.
So I guess Fantastic Four 1 counts now too, and Action Comics 1 counts. And anyway,
you're making the counter case against your claim.
Welcome to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and counters and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for the 8 Deaths of Spider Talk and the 8 Deaths of Narrative Sensibilities. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry, Dan.
You might actually be watching the 8 Deaths of Spider Talk as we cover this series. But regardless, if you want to swing along with us on our journey through Spidey's past, present, and future, subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. Those reviews are important as they're the best way to spread the word about the show and indicate the size of our audience to guests and collaborators.
Especially if Apple is burying the podcast. But that is not important right now. This podcast exists because of the support of our Patreon members. If you want to receive early episodes and exclusive artwork and keep this podcast going, go to AmazingSpiderTalk.com and consider joining our Patreon. On the Patreon, we've already kicked off Season 7 of the Amazing Spider Talk, where the first 4 episodes of that season are already available. It would have been 5, but somebody had to get sick on this show. So if you want to join our conversation about the David Michelinie era of Spider-Man, consider joining the Patreon. Oh, apparently he's still sick. Look at that.
I am, in fact, still sick. I have not quite shaken this cold from 2 weeks ago. So everybody say a little prayer for me that it's nothing serious. But in the meantime, today on the show, Mark and I will be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6, number 68. This issue was written by Justina Ireland. This is the final issue by her during this transition arc. I guess our feelings run the gamut about her contributions. Mark almost choked on his beer when I said that.
There you go.
The cover features artwork by Patrick Gleason and Richard Isanove. The interior pages feature pencils by Andrea Broccardo, inks by Scott Hanna, colors by Marcio Menyz, and of course, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. This issue was first released on February 19th, 2025. I think there's no other place to start here, which is to say we've been going 3 issues now with nihilistic Peter Parker, and we've been bemoaning how long we've been stuck in that status quo with him inactive as the protagonist. And the last issue, I gave it an F. I don't know if it was truly deserving of that F, but I will stick by it. That I really didn't like that issue.
Sure.
And surely, if staying in that status quo longer was what made us really not like it, surely immediately overturning it would be the right answer. What say you, Mark?
Look, I guess getting out of that status quo made me ever so slightly, I don't want to say enjoy, but tolerate this issue more than the last one. Much in the way that it's easier to get a top wisdom tooth extracted instead of a bottom one, gravity pulls it down and it's just a little less painful afterwards.
Is that how that works?
That was my experience when I had my wisdom teeth
sure,
out. I don't know what your experience is, but I found the top.
I just didn't know gravity was the main contributor to that.
That was my assumption. The dentist never told me anything. But the point being was yeah, I mean, like, it was slightly more pleasant, but like I still had a tooth pulled out of my mouth and still couldn't eat solid foods for a couple days. And, you know, and that's kind of how I feel about this comic, Dan. I mean, like, yeah, it was a relief to me that we have finally moved on from Nihilist Peter, just because like it had gone on, frankly, I would say at least one issue too long, probably two, if I'm being completely blunt about it. I mean, I would have just probably had ended it after the point death and then the one full issue afterwards. But you know, we just kept it going. Yeah, but like everything about how they brought this back was both sloppy and undramatic and unimpressive and kind of, you know, I hate to be so pejorative in how I critique this thing, because that's never been the Amazing Spider Talk's MO, but like it was just dumb. Like it was just like,
Yes.
like this is like these are comic books that we're paying $4.99 for in the year 2025. You have to do better than this, and they did not. And that's just the basic facts right now.
Yeah, I don't want to use a word like dumb or bad, you know, like that's never my MO, as you said, but like at a certain point it's worth acknowledging that like a book of this quality, I don't necessarily think deserves like the level of thought that we could potentially put into critiquing it. Like some things are just poorly done, and this is one of those things. And the thing that upsets me most about this is, well, I mean, the reality is everything. I think this is a complete failure on every level, artistically, you know, from a writing standpoint and an editing standpoint. I mean, nobody rose to the occasion here. And oftentimes, you know, the sort of like thing that pulls us out of a true spiral is that like, hey, Amazing Spider-Man's got great art, you know? And I just don't think that the art here, as competently done as it is on a line-to-line basis and in how figures are drawn, narratively, it often fails to convey the story that it needs to convey using the tools of the comic medium. And it starts even just at the beginning where, you know, Peter discovers that May, Randy, and Shay, and I guess Ricardo, whoever this other guy is, are laying there dead on the ground. I'll admit, I got to that page and I laughed out loud while reading it.
Surely
Like,
the emotional gut punch they were going for, Dan.
yeah, they look silly.
Yeah.
Like they look like they just all took like a nap right in the middle of the street. Like what killed them, how they died, who's to really say?
Yeah.
You know, do I need like their intestines trailed out around them? No, but like sell me on this, find a better angle. Like, and especially if this is going to be a moment that's supposed to make me believe in their deaths, this kind of flat depiction of them all just laying there, like, I'm not going to believe it. And maybe we're all just so cynical about this. And certainly if you read the letters page, where we yet again have Nick Lowe espousing in complete disbelief. Can you believe it? Spider-Man's dead. He'll never come back. Well, you know, if I had a dime for every time I've seen him write that, you know, maybe I would, you know, maybe I could afford a book like this. And I say maybe, you know, despite how much he's been killed, these books are getting expensive. But like nobody believes this. The creators don't believe in the story they're telling, and certainly I don't, which allowed me to laugh at it. But even then, if you're going to kill these characters off and have Spider-Man go through a major change like this, do anything with it.
Yeah.
Like, don't just repeat his foundational story that he realized that his actions have consequences on the people in his life. Like, explore it in any interesting way. And I think I even like posited a way in issue 65 that I thought it was going to go, because I thought they had put the work in to take us that direction, and still we're going with the laziest thing. And it's so boring. And it gets to your critique. I had you in the back of my head the whole time I was reading this, of you saying like, nothing ever changes. And the solution to every story is the same thing, and it is boring.
Yeah, I mean, look, I will tuck away the Marcus Wright admittance here. We'll bring that up at some later date to be determined. It'd be a centennial episode of Amazing Spider Talk. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, like if you look at this objectively here, like what was the purpose of 3.5 issues of Peter being in this state of nihilism, this state of lacking responsibility, of not caring, of not being active. I mean, it on its face, it was just to put Peter on the sideline of his own book again, which is like the other, like, why is this a repetitive theme of this book over and over and over again? I mean, going back 10 years now to, like, I mean, I think Spider-Verse was really the first time where we were just like, wait, why is Peter like taking the back seat here to everybody else? That's so weird.
I think all throughout Volume 3, we were expressing things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Miss Marvel tie-ins and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it was almost like, having Otto be Spider-Man, like, made the Spider Office come to this revelation, like, hey, maybe we don't really need Peter to be a main character in his own book for it to be good. But, like, I think they're missing the point of what made Superior interesting and different. But putting all that aside, it's just, like, I don't know what else it accomplished, because, like, there was no like journey that we really went on with Peter over the last few issues, which is frankly, like, this is not me being like trying to claim being right here, but it was why, like, when we entered this experiment a few weeks ago or a few months ago, I was just like, yeah, this is not for me, because, like, in my mind, I'm like, this is not gonna, like, what are we really gonna accomplish here? Like, what can we really say here, given the track record and the talent of the people involved in telling this story, and that's what we got.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe what we're really watching is my slow burn into cynicism as I, like, continue to hold out hope that we'll get a good story in a Spider-Man comic.
Right.
Like, I mean, I feel like I have to hold out that hope.
Yeah.
Or else I'd stop doing this show.
For sure. For sure. But
it is repeatedly heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. And look, I'm not trying to, like, tell you or you, Dan, or you, the listeners, to embrace cynicism. But, like, the fact of the matter is, like, in looking at this storyline and this scenario on its face, it was just like, to me, it was just another iteration on an idea that we've gotten over and over and over again on this book. That's the thing. It just seemed wholly unoriginal. It was camouflaging itself as potentially something new, but I was just like, no, this is just going to be another way to take Peter out of the book in some way. And that's what they did. And that's what we got. And then and because when you take Peter out of the book in a kind of, obligatory way, when you do put him back in, like they do here, there's no style, there's no grace, there's nothing organic about it. It's just, oh, I've realized the error of my ways, which is just like, and then he realizes the error of his ways. He, gives up his remaining reads, which, like, they take like half a second to acknowledge what that means. But even then, like, I still feel like you could have done a lot more with that. Like, do you understand?
Oh yeah, you could wrestle with that for half an issue or more. Like that's a big decision to say, like, I value these 4 people or 3 people and 1 random guy more than I value the potential of the Earth being destroyed, or like, I believe in myself so strongly that I know that I can do the impossible. If this be my destiny, I will not die, and I will make, like, the revival of these 4 people truly worth it. Yeah. But none of that is entertained.
Like, where's Doctor Strange? Where's Doctor Doom? We don't, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just like, things done to, it's Mad Lib's Mad Lib style storytelling right now, and then like to top it all off, like I made fun of it in the recap, but it's like, oh, I'm gonna bring them all back, but no, they can't. They're not gonna remember anything, and it's just like, so literally no one has learned anything here. You know what I mean? Like Peter, you have literally spent the last 3-4 comics, being the worst version of yourself, and no consequences were paid. You know what I mean? Like, unless you really think that, oh, he's dead now and the book's going to end, which, I would love to see Nick Lowe and this regime do that in a way that would actually like impress me as a reader. Like, I dare you to make Peter dead. Because you won't, because like you're unoriginal and you're a hack right now at this point, and it's just bad storytelling all around. I'm going back to being pejorative, but I'm sorry. Anyway.
I mean, it's not the same scenario as Superior Spider-Man, because the book isn't canceled and relaunched under another name, but like you almost like I mean, I don't really believe this, but like you almost wish people cared enough about this to issue death threats to the writer over killing off Peter Parker, but nobody believes in this and that it's something that's going to stick. And that's fine. Like Marvel has committed the sin of killing off these heroes so many times now that like it's part of the tropes of comics is to do it, and that's okay. Like, so long as the story around what that means for them to go away and come back has like some value to it, like the death has meaning. And I thought Superior handled it really well. I thought the Kindred killing him 50 times did not. Like, that erased a lot of the meaning of what it means to kill someone,
right?
And maybe the book was interested in exploring that. I don't know if that was like on Spencer's mind, but like whatever, this falls into that latter category of just like having no real value to it because the stakes are not established. And there is a version of this story where watching Peter burn out his last life could have had real narrative value, even if we knew 2 issues later he would be back, because we had watched what it meant to preserve each of those lives, or so on and so forth. But this book is not interested in that. It is interested in the silly world building franchise-ness of it all, and how do we introduce a new costume, a new gimmick, a new whatever, and not actually invest in what the characters are interested in. Enough that like we've established a very like solid rote cycle for these things. It is, how do we spend a bunch of issues digging Peter into the deepest hole we can possibly think of, and then cheat the rules and resolve all of it in less than an issue, often with no follow-up and nothing learned by Peter. And that's exactly what happened here, just like in Superior, the ending of that, which also edited by Nick Lowe, although not started by him, with an absolute cheat of an ending. And it's so annoying at this point. I don't understand, like, maybe they know they're doing this. I can't imagine, like, that they know they're doing this. It's just bad storytelling, and they're going to get away with it again.
Yeah, you can't keep getting away with it.
I know, right?
But look, I don't, it's so funny, over the years, we keep hearing about editorial mandates and like the mandate of Peter and MJ and all these other things. And like, what I want to know is what is the mandate behind thinking like this is how you tell a Spider-Man story? Because
I don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's not the reason the book is bad. Yeah. The reason the book is bad is because they can't tell a story.
Yeah. So let's conspiracy theorize around that, maybe, folks. Like I think you're focusing on the wrong things right now. I think the bigger issue is like what is the inhibitor here to just like telling a story that advances Peter's journey in some kind of meaningful way, where he learns something, he loses something, he like whatever, like let's push it forward. instead of running on this hamster wheel here. What did you think of the X-Men again? You know, because like they have been so elegantly interwoven into the fabric of this comic right now.
Yeah, so Peter Parker is back, and he's back to being Spider-Man, and he teams up with the X-Men against Calyx, the blighted Calyx, who takes his creatures and his dogs that are strangely phallic looking and sends them out into the city. And this to me was another kind of like baffling addition to this comic. I mean, I think the writing between the characters, you know, Justina Ireland can clearly write witty dialogue and character interactions. And there's some fun, like if there's any fun in this book to be had, it's the exchanges between the X-Men and Spidey. There's like a good one between Spidey and Juggernaut as they now realize that they have to team up, which is obviously a historical anomaly for their relationship. But then you get the same kind of like telling, not showing, that has also been endemic to this book, which is like, and specifically this 8 deaths as we get Spidey, delving into magic. And like, I rolled my eyes the minute I read like, hey, Doctor Strange taught me this spell off panel that's so powerful, it'll stop anything.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I don't remember when that happened, but sure enough. And like, oh my God, it can't stop Calyx. I mean, look, maybe I'm grateful that like this random spell wasn't actually the solution to defeating things, because I think I've read that Spider-Man comic from this office before where there is a narrative solution that just gets invented out of nowhere. So like at least this one didn't stop him, but it's like, how is that meant to establish the stakes? Like, if he had used that spell against a previous villain and defeated him, then maybe this would have set like something to tell me, oh my God, this guy's really powerful. That spell stopped Calyx before, but this time it doesn't. Here it's just like, okay, we're just burning pages here. I knew he was powerful before. This did nothing more to illuminate that for me. What did you think of like Calyx's plan here, if you want to call it?
Well,
as
what
such?
was the plan, Dan? I mean, like he's out there and then he's blowing up his dogs, and sausage making reveal here, folks. Like, I wrote my recap, and it was the Calyx and going between his world and the real world, and Dan apparently he made some edits to what I wrote, because like, I don't even know if it's that it's not clear, but it's also just like, what is this and who cares? Like, I think that's like
yeah.
I'm also just like, if I can be very cranky and rant for a second, like, like Calyx is the one who it boggles my mind that Calyx is like the big bad right now of this storyline, because like the way he's introduced is that he's just kind of this joke and he's the sore loser of the Scions, but now it's just like, no, he's going to just push this plan. And I'm just like it, again, not that I'm actually trying to do the Spider Office's work for them, but like it also like in terms of this whole, if we actually still care about the rules of the Covenant and what Spider-Man was allegedly supposed to be doing when this whole thing started a couple of months ago, it's just like there's so clearly a loophole in the fact that all of this havoc and whatnot is being caused by someone who has lost already. You know what I mean? Like, he's done.
Yes.
He's off the board. So like
can I take it a step further,
sure.
Mark? Okay. So the whole point of the Covenant, right, is so that Sidorak keeps up his end of the bargain and keeps the casket or whatever spell going to keep the blight out. But all it took was like one of the Scions to go, let me go for a walk outside of the casket,
right,
and get infected by this thing, and suddenly I can just go to Earth and do this. Like what?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, how is this allowed in the realm of whatever rules were established? Like, oh, the loophole is you literally just have to go to the blight outside of the protective spell where it's being contained, and you're free to do with it whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like, wasn't the Covenant supposed to prevent this? I don't get it at all.
Like, look, like we're reviewing a comic. You know, I always come back to this when we talk about like this, like what is going on here, and like not just with this story, but all the stories that we have reviewed in our 12 years of podcasting, Dan. But it's like, you know, clearly we're talking about fantastical, nonsensical things, about, you know, in general, and yet when it works, it follows a set of rules. It's rules that they're creating, but like you create the rules and then you stick to it, and you tell a story within the confines of those rules. And you can change and evolve. The rules can evolve over time. You know, like new villains come in, new situations happen, and the rules change.
And that's the history of Spider-Man.
Yeah,
like the rules are how his powers work.
That's comic books, period. But like within the confines of a story, you have to stick to the rules. And this comic has like thrown aside the rules months ago at this point. So that's why it's like, you know, it just adds to the level of apathy on my part, because it's just like you are like, you know, it's improv jazz right now. It's electric jazz. That's why I mentioned that in the recap. It wasn't just me being a goofball. Like you're just whatever, you know, like we could just keep change, you know, like we're, you know, you are not doing yes, you know, you are breaking the firm rules of yes and improv right now and just doing your own thing. So like I'm not going to follow it because I don't care. Because like if you're not going to play by your own rules in any kind of sensible way, then why should I care as the reader? I have zero investment in any of this. You're going to end it and I'll be like, cool, let's move on. Let's see, you know, hopefully Pepe Larraz can like, you know, inspire something out of Joe Kelly and this office, because that's all we're hinging our hopes on right now. It's not coming in the next 3, you know, or 2.1 issues or 2-point death issues of this comic.
Yeah, everything is hanging on Pepe Larraz. That is where all of my hopes are coming, is like, can I look at beautiful pictures for a little while? Yeah, I mean, it's all nonsense, you know, like, but I want to, and we're going to talk about the art after our Slack break, but, man, the lack of clarity just from the visuals alone is baffling. Like the dogs exploding. I mean, sure, we see it, but like the idea that it captures all of New York City in the blight is not even attempted at. And like, it's just so much like, yes, anding, but just making up new rules as it goes that the art isn't even like allowed to try to convey. You know, even things like we find out like, oh, I guess Calyx absorbed Kradios as well. And it's like, wait, the last I saw, he burst out of his chest. Like, or, you know, like, you know, so that's absorbing him apparently. Not to mention that when we go into the Sitaraki and the Crimson Cosmos, none of those guys are absorbed. They're all just laying there dead on the ground like they're taking a nap, like Randy, May, and Shay. And Ricardo. Can't forget Ricardo.
Can't forget.
So it's like...
never forget.
Never forget. Hashtag never forget Ricardo. So there you go. Just a complete failure on every level, I think. In the meantime, though, let's get to talking about a place where everything is positive and magical and not a hashtag failure, or I'm hashtagging everything now. Mark, tell our listeners where they can continue the conversation.
You bet, Dan. Hundreds of listeners like you hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans on Slack. The amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you could jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more. Dan, you know, in the Slack this past week, I learned that you dropped an F-bomb in our last recording, and I didn't realize that. So, like, the Slack is a really informative place, even for people who are allegedly on the other end of our podcast. So, but what else do you talk about in the Slack this week?
Oh, yeah. Well, I love the Slack because it's like one of the few places I get feedback to what we do, Mark. You know, I think we're in the post-email era. Like, I used to get a lot of emails every episode about, like, all the mistakes that we made and things that happened on the show. And I think people have moved past that kind of engagement with things in writing a formal email to the show. But the Slack, every week I get to find out what mistake I made or what F-bomb I dropped, and I will remember to edit out when it goes into the main feed. That was a fun one. One of the things that was also funny, so Alex Galucki, our video editor, and I were recording the final episode of our Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man coverage that is exclusive to the Patreon. So if you want to hear about our discussion of the final 2 episodes of the show, you can go there. And in the middle of the episode, I got an email from Marvel's Publicity about the cover to Amazing Spider-Man 975, the next mega-sized issue, and it's issue 11 of the upcoming Joe Kelly run. And we had to stop everything in the middle of the show. I was like, Alex, you need to see this. I cannot keep talking to you about this show without talking about this cover. And to describe the cover, we have like a spacesuit Spider-Man, I guess would be how I describe it. He looks kind of like that X-Men, what is his name? Warlock or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's got like the Miguel O'Hara blades off of his wrists, and he's in outer space looking like he's going through hyperspace with the symbiotes, Carnage and Venom in the background. And there's a giant series of green glowing pumpkin bombs and a spaceship. And there's like a Venom looking Spider Ham. It is the craziest cover of Amazing Spider-Man maybe I've ever seen, Mark. And I texted you this cover,
and I didn't respond.
Alex and I literally
so
across Zoom. Alex and I put up your message prompt, and we were just waiting to read your response, and then it never came.
I'm sorry.
So
I was also out when you sent it to me. I was doing Squid Game, the game in New York City. So anyway.
Oh, that is fun.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about that later, Mark.
Okay.
But for Alex's benefit, I'm going to allow you to respond to this image here live on the show. Obviously, you've seen it.
Yes.
But if you could recreate what you thought when you saw this image.
My honest thought in the moment it happened was just like, what the... I won't say it because I don't want to have our third F-bomb in history, but like, what the...
Yeah, we're going to lose our child-friendly podcast.
There you go. We're going to lose our PG rating. But I was literally like, what is this? Like this... I mean, yes, it's just an overdose of I don't know. Like this is like... It's Spider-Man as if it's being written by a bunch of ADHD addled people who are just like, how about this and how about that? and I mean, I don't know.
Well, we'll see. I mean, look, Pepe Larraz could draw the phone book, and I think it would be.
It looks cool, but
it looks really cool.
Yeah. Like I'm not like, what's this art? I'm just like, it looks cool, but what the is this?
Yeah. And to me, it immediately sent up red flags of like, why does every like run or story of this need to like reinvent Spider-Man through some high concept lens?
Right.
Maybe it won't end up being that, and the story will naturally bring Spider-Man to this place. Although I can't think of a cover that seems more unnatural to what I know a Spider-Man story to be. Despite it being a very attractive looking cover. So we will find out what that issue is, but I opened it and truly was like, I think the same response to you is like, really, what are we even doing here? And we will come to find out by issue 11 of the new run, which is also issue 975. So the Slack got a hold of this, which is why I bring this up, and there were a lot of people talking about it and theories around it. Some people thinking that it would tie into the conclusion to Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man show with some kind of synergy there. Other people calling back to the Zeb Wells run and whatever was going on with Norman Osborn, because there clearly is some Goblin inclusion, given that there's a green glowing pumpkin bomb on the cover. So, I guess the question still remains to be seen. What does the closure of Osborne Industries / Oscorp mean for that company? What are Norman's greater plans? And what was he building in the background of that series for so long? Maybe this is the culmination of that, or maybe it's something completely out of left field, but it's a crazy looking cover. And if you want to speculate about it, come join in on the fun on our amazing Spider Slack. There's a link in the description of the episode that'll let you sign up in less than a minute, and you can look at that artwork, make your eyes go cross-eyed, and then throw out your latest conspiracy theory, as I am wont to do on the Slack. But in the meantime, let's talk about Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6, number 68. I want to talk about the art. This is the third issue in a row that has Andrea Broccardo doing the pencils. And, Andrea, I don't think is a bad artist or someone whose art is unattractive. Like, we've certainly had issues of Amazing Spider-Man that are far uglier than this. But to me, first of all, the inclusion of Andrea Broccardo being kind of 3 issues in a row here, to me screams rush job or scheduling snafu, given how this series was advertised as being like this kind of big, a series helmed by Ed McGuinness, who was very promoted on this. And these things happen. But it is shocking to see 3 issues in a row. And to me, they've gotten progressively sloppier, each one. Not even just for how the figures are drawn, which I don't think is bad, although I think Scott Hanna's inks are not necessarily providing a ton of clarity in the line work. But also just the storytelling beats, I think, are really confused. And to me, that seems like a sign of rush on the art.
Sure. I mean, just the sheer fact that and look, I mean, maybe this was the plan all along. Dan, you pay attention to the solicits obviously more closely than I do, as we just discussed in our Slack segment. But the fact that we had we for the most part we've been getting these comics every other week, but we had a 2-week gap, and then we had back-to-back weeks, and that, to me, when that starts happening, it's always a flag to me that something was delayed, and then they have to push something else out, because if they readjust the schedule too much, they're gonna screw up the last issue, or or the issue after the last issue, if you will, in terms of the timing of it. And clearly, I don't know, to me it would appear that something is off with the pacing of this book right now, just from a sheer sending it out to the stores standpoint, and it's not just a Diamond thing, which could be at this point. But anyway, so I mean, it is the artwork is very much aligned with, it brings me back to the end of the Spencer era, where it was 8 inkers and 3 pencilers, and you know what I mean? We're just trying to get it done, and I guess Broccardo works fast, or maybe faster than McGuinness does, but this any semblance of charm or intrigue that this book had from the art team is now, I mean, in addition to this from the story, is just long gone. You know what I mean? It's just we're really just trying to punch the clock and get to the finish line, it feels like, which is just, even more disappointing.
Even someone like Marcio Menyz, who we're so used to giving positive feedback on. I mean, it's a fine book, but it's a lot of flats that are barely touched up with any kind of lighting detail. And even on the first few pages, you can see that the flats are colored outside the lines on characters with no cleanup work done, which suggests a harried speed, whether you needed to bring in an assist on flats, and that work was not able to be supervised by an editor. This is not the issue 75 with the really beautiful colors from Menyz on introducing Beyond. This is, power through, get it done, and get it out the door. And like, it's just not thoughtful about how it's telling the story. Like things like the X-Men are corrupted by the blight, but the only way you would tell that is because their eyes are white.
Yeah.
Their tiny little eyes don't have pupils in them. Rather than those wisps or whatever it is, the Kirby crackle that Calyx has, but like half of them, you can't see their eyes. Like Quentin Quire has shades on.
Yeah.
And the first person they show you corrupted by the blight is Cyclops, whose eyes you can't see. And he's the one that attacks another person. So it's like, it's literally not communicating the exact thing it's trying to communicate because you can't use that language with that character.
Right.
There's like a panel in the like black and white thing where it looks like Juggernaut is like holding magic and temper as if they're like his own hands. And like my best guess is that it's supposed to be an image of him like holding them apart from each other so they don't kill each other. But nothing of that is captured in that panel. And like, so it's super confusing. And then even like the final, like, I guess that's not the final image, but like the final big reveal of the blight as a sort of like insectoid giant creature is really spatially confused. Like you have like Spider-Man up by Sidorak's head and there's a portal that opens over top of it. But then in the image of the blight, he's like in the foreground in the way that it's rendered, and like Sidorak is in the background, even though he's supposed to be over his head. It just like spatially doesn't make any sense. And like maybe I'm picking nits, but it's the kind of thing that like with enough time, an editor would go to the colorist and be like, "Can you render these in the same space as each other?" But obviously there was no time or interest in doing that, and so you have these images that just visually and graphically don't make any sense. Nitpicks, whatever, like. This is part of the job of putting out a comic book that tells a narrative in a coherent way.
Which is what, we should aspire to. Any other last thoughts on just everything going on with Sidorak and the Syra and Calyx? I don't know, man.
We go to the Crimson Cosmos at the end and like everybody's dead, even though I guess they were absorbed or not or whatever. And Sidorak is just like not doing anything, which like, historically that's Sidorak's thing. Like in all of his appearances, he does sit unmoving and that's kind of his deal. Although
just
like
eating an ice cream cone. No.
Yeah, the like true cynic in me is really preparing myself to get hurt by another big twist with Sidorak by the story's end, just because they keep focusing on him doing nothing, and it's like, he's going to get out of that chair and reveal that he had some other plan all along with this, like I'm just waiting for that. What's that?
But do we know? I mean, I don't know.
I suspect that they're like going to try to pull another twist just because of who they are.
Okay.
Sure. In this office, like, Spider-Man is dead, and that will last for as long as they don't invent another rule we didn't know about before.
Hey, Jerry, it's Frank Costanza. Spider-Man's dead, and George Steinbrenner's here. Sorry.
All right, Mark, what's your grade on this one?
Well, I know I said at the very beginning, like, well, it's like getting a top wisdom teeth removed versus a bottom. But I think this conversation has moved me to go into the F zone for this comic. So I'm giving this one an F.
That's so funny because you were like, this had nowhere. Like you were like last is you're like, there are places this could get worse. And before the show, you were like, no, this is like a D-. Like it's about as bad as the previous one. I think this one is as bad as the previous one. Spider-Man's involvement notwithstanding, like this is a failure on every level of artistry in the comics realm, and in terms of just sequential storytelling. It is a cheat in every conceivable way, and it's showing up to play golf and someone puts a football on the tee. like what are we doing here? So it is also an F for me as well.
This is the email asking, what did you do at your time yesterday? And if you don't reply, you get fired of comics. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm making it real, folks. Anyway, why don't we bring it home, Dan?
Yes, I think we shall.
It's that time for all good things to come to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning into this episode of the Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, this podcast exists because of the support of our listeners on Patreon. For only $4.99 a month, the cost of a new comic, you can help support our show's existence while getting early episodes, including these reviews the same week the comics release, the first 4 episodes of Season 7 of our show, our reviews of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, my diary entries as I write my Whatever a Spider Can book, exclusive artwork, and a ton of other bonuses. So thank you to everyone who already supports us and our work, and a special shout out to our newest members, Gareth, Alex Marcus, Jed McClellan, and Yasmin Quiroz, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but I'm doing my best here.
Whatever you mispronounce, we just amplify with love, Dan. But thank you all. If you value Smart's comics criticism and historical analysis, we hope you'll consider supporting us on Patreon. Or maybe it's, you value cool talk about television. Anyway, what we do on the show is admittedly niche. Still, we feel that we offer valuable commentary and model fair methods of criticism for a character and medium that really receives the kind of consideration we believe it deserves. Pretty cool to say
most of the time
after we give this issue an F. So if that is valuable to you, we can only continue doing what we do with your support on Patreon.
So, Mark, until we find out who, what, when, where, how, and why is a Broccardo, what's our motto?
Lucy, you got some splaining to do with great podcasts. Oh, man, I knocked my phone over. With great podcasts, there must also come the amazing Spider Talk.
Mr. Next